Ever seen an entire neighborhood celebrate peace after years of HOA chaos? That's what happened when the Queen of Citations finally lost her crown and her house. But the real twist? Karma didn't come with flashing lights this time. It came with silence. Stick around and hit subscribe, because this is how Maple Court finally found freedom after the storm. You ever see karma roll up with flashing lights and a tow hook? If you haven't, sit back. Because this story, this beautiful poetic mess, was the day karma clocked in for overtime, right in the middle of our quiet little suburb. And she came equipped with a hydraulic lift, a clipboard, and the most satisfying beep beep I've ever heard. It all started on a calm Thursday evening. The kind of day where everything feels too peaceful, birds singing, sprinklers whispering across lawns, and the faint hum of kids riding their bikes around the cul-de-sac. The sky glowed soft orange, painted with those streaks of gold that make you think the world might actually be a decent place. That's what I thought too, until I saw her. Karen. The self-appointed sheriff of our HOA. The clipboard queen herself. The woman who treated every house in the neighborhood like it was part of her personal kingdom. And when she walked down the street, people didn't wave, they hid. You could hear her coming before you even saw her. That sharp click-clack of her heels on the pavement. That rhythm, crisp, loud, and full of purpose, like the sound of an approaching audit. I was in my driveway that day, washing my blue sedan. Just a normal evening routine. I had my favorite playlist going, soap suds sliding down the sides, and for once, I was actually feeling relaxed. Then the music stopped. Or maybe it didn't, maybe it just felt like it did, because the moment I heard those heels, my heart sank. I looked up, and there she was. Karen was marching straight toward me, crisp white blouse tucked into beige pants, hair pulled so tight it looked like she hadn't smiled since 1998. Her sunglasses reflected the sunset, but I could practically feel her eyes narrowing underneath. And of course, in her right hand, the dreaded clipboard. That clipboard wasn't just a tool. It was her sword, her shield, her badge of power. She had weaponized bureaucracy. She didn't greet me, didn't smile, didn't even pretend to be neighborly. She just stood at the edge of my driveway, tapped her pen against the paper, and said, "You know this is a violation, right?" I blinked. "I'm sorry, what is?" She pointed at my car. "You're parked with your front tire over the curb. That's obstruction of the public walkway, Section 7, Subrule 3. I glanced down. The edge of my tire, barely an inch past the concrete lip. It wasn't blocking anything. A squirrel could have walked by without noticing. I looked back up at her. "Are you serious?" Karen didn't even flinch. Rules are rules. Now, here's the thing about Karen. She didn't enforce the HOA, she lived it. It wasn't about keeping the neighborhood nice. It was about control. She loved that tiny sliver of power more than anything, and she used it like a weapon against anyone who dared to enjoy life without her permission. I could feel my patience starting to slip. "Karen, it's just a car wash. I'll move it when I'm done." She smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile people give when they understand. It was the kind you see before a storm hits. "Oh, I'll be sure to note that down," she said, scribbling something on her clipboard. "Repeated offenses can lead to towing." Then she spun on her heel and walked away, muttering something about standards and community image. I shook my head and went back to rinsing the car. But the peace was gone. The whole time, I could feel her energy hanging in the air like a bad smell. And in the back of my mind, I knew this wasn't over. You ever deal with someone who needs to win? Who can't let go unless they get the last word, the last rule, the last ounce of control? That was Karen. I'd seen her go after people for the dumbest things. She fined the Johnsons $50 because their Halloween pumpkins were too large. She made old Mrs. Simmons repaint her fence because the color didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. She even wrote a citation for someone's dog barking at 6 p.m. So when she said towing, I knew she meant it. But here's the part Karen didn't realize. Karma was already warming up her engine. That night, I couldn't help but replay the moment in my head. The smug smile. The pen scratching on the clipboard. The way she said, "Rules are rules." It grated on me like nails on glass. But I also couldn't stop laughing a little. Because Karen's arrogance always had a way of tripping over itself. She was too confident, too proud, too sure that the world followed her rulebook. And sure enough, She'd written down the wrong address. I didn't know it at that moment, but that tiny, delicious mistake was going to change everything. The next morning, while I was sipping my coffee, I saw her pacing in her driveway, phone pressed to her ear. Her tone was sharp, bossy. I couldn't catch every word, but I heard just enough: blue sedan, illegal parking, tow truck immediately. I smiled into my mug. She really called one. She had no idea the paperwork she'd filled out listed her home address instead of mine. And that's when I realized karma wasn't just coming. She'd already been dispatched. You ever feel that electric tingle in the air right before something big happens? That's what I felt as I watched Karen strut across her driveway, certain she was about to humiliate me. I didn't know when or how, but I knew one thing for sure: by the time this was over, she wouldn't be the one teaching lessons. No, this time, Karen was about to learn one. Because sometimes, the universe doesn't need you to fight back. Sometimes all you have to do is wait for the tow truck. Bell, stick around and hit subscribe, because what happened next? That's when karma showed up, lights flashing, ready to haul away more than just a car. The next morning was deceptively calm. The air was cool, the sky crystal clear, and the street looked like something out of a real estate brochure. Manicured lawns, quiet driveways, and not a leaf out of place. It was the kind of morning that made you forget how quickly things can turn. I was sitting on my porch, coffee steaming in hand, when I saw her again. Karen. She wasn't strutting this time, she was pacing. Her phone was glued to her ear, and even from across the street, I could hear the sharp, bossy tone that meant someone somewhere was getting a full dose of HOA authority. "Yes, this is a serious violation," she said loudly, eyes darting toward my house. "We have to maintain standards in this neighborhood. Send a tow truck as soon as possible." I nearly choked on my coffee. She really did it. She actually called in a tow truck over a car parked 3 inches over a curb. It was so ridiculous, I almost felt impressed. She must have noticed me watching, because she gave this smug little smirk, lifted her clipboard like a trophy, and mouthed, "Rules are rules." That's when I caught something important: the way she read the address off the form. "Yep," she said into the phone. 42 Maple Court. Now, I don't know if it was fate, irony, or divine comedy, but that wasn't my house. That was hers. I just sat there, quiet, sipping my coffee like I was watching the pre-show to a fireworks finale. She hung up, straightened her blouse, and looked proud of herself. That smug satisfaction, the kind that only comes from people who've never been told they're wrong. For a while, the street fell silent again. You could hear sprinklers ticking in the distance, birds chirping in the oak tree near the corner. It was almost peaceful. Almost. Then came the sound. A low, distant rumble. Slow at first, then louder, deep and mechanical, echoing off the houses. You know that sound. That heavy diesel engine that says, something big's about to happen. Karen perked up immediately. She turned toward the sound, shading her eyes from the sun. And then it came into view. A massive tow truck. Bright orange, chrome grille gleaming, lights flashing like a parade float of justice. It rumbled down the street, gears grinding, the driver cool as stone. Karen's eyes lit up like she'd just summoned the cavalry. She practically skipped to the edge of her driveway, waving her clipboard in the air like she was conducting a symphony. "Right here," she called out. "This is the one." Now, I'll admit, I had to bite my lip to stop from laughing. The driver hadn't even stopped yet, but I could tell where this was going. He pulled up beside her, engine idling, exhaust hissing softly. He leaned out the window, glancing at his clipboard. "Ma'am, this is 42 Maple Court, correct?" Karen smiled proudly. "That's right. The blue sedan parked illegally in front of this property. HOA violation." The driver nodded, jotted something down, and stepped out. His boots hit the pavement with a solid thud. He adjusted his cap, walked right past her driveway, past my mailbox, and stopped, directly in front of her white SUV. He squatted down, checked the license plate, and nodded. Karen's grin faltered. Excuse me," she said, pointing at my car. "That's the vehicle you're here for." The driver looked at her like she'd just told him the sky was green. "Ma'am, the paperwork says tow the vehicle registered at this address, 42 Maple Court. This is it." Karen blinked, her mouth twitching. No, that's my car." The driver straightened up. Then you might want to take it up with whoever filed this report, because this baby's going for a ride. I swear, the silence that followed was the most glorious pause in human history. Karen started flailing, waving her clipboard, her arms, even her phone. Wait. Stop. There's been a mistake. I'm the HOA president. The driver just smirked. Then you should know better than anyone, no exceptions. He backed up, hooked the chains, and within seconds, the hydraulic lift hissed to life. The truck groaned as her SUV tilted upward, tires leaving the pavement. That's when the neighbors started coming out. You could feel the shift, that collective curiosity turning into amusement. Doors opened. Phones came out. Someone even brought popcorn. Old Mrs. Simmons, the one Karen once fined for excessive Halloween decor, was leaning over her fence, grinning ear to ear. "Looks like justice is getting a tow today," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Karen spun around, face redder than a stop sign. "You can't record this," she shouted. "This is illegal." The tow driver climbed back into his cab, completely unfazed. "You'd be surprised what's legal when it's your own paperwork, lady." And then, that sound. That glorious metallic click of the gear shift. The truck began to roll forward, Karen's SUV swinging slightly behind it, like Karma herself was waving goodbye. The entire neighborhood started clapping. Someone yelled, "Hey Karen, need a ride to the next HOA meeting?" Another voice shouted, "Guess you'll have to fine yourself for improper parking." I leaned against my mailbox, pretending to check my mail, just to savor every second. Karen's voice cracked as she screamed after the truck, "You'll regret this. I'll fix this." But deep down we all knew this wasn't a mistake. This was the universe doing paperwork. As the tow truck disappeared down the street, its flashing lights fading into the distance, a calm settled over the block. A peaceful kind of silence. The kind that only comes after the villain in every neighborhood finally gets her moment of humility. Karen stood there, frozen in her driveway, staring at the empty spot where her car used to be. The clipboard hung loosely in her hand. The birds were singing again. Even the air felt lighter. I took another sip of coffee and whispered to myself, "Told you Karma had a tow hook." And right then I realized, that wasn't just poetic justice. That was cinematic perfection. For a few days, things were quiet. Too quiet. You know that eerie calm after a storm, where you can still smell the rain and feel the air heavy with what just happened. That's what the neighborhood felt like. No one talked about the tow truck incident out loud, but everyone knew. It spread like wildfire. You could see it in the smirks during morning walks, in the neighbors chatting a little too loudly while taking out the trash, in the knowing glances exchanged across driveways. Karen, meanwhile, had vanished. Her car was gone, her confidence gone with it. Usually, she'd march through the neighborhood like she was leading a parade, clipboard in hand. But for 3 days straight, her blinds stayed closed. Not a single sighting. Then came Monday morning. Every first Monday of the month, the HOA board held their neighborhood standards meeting at the clubhouse, basically a 90-minute session where Karen complained about people's lawn colors while pretending to be a leader. That morning, the parking lot was full. It seemed everyone wanted to attend this one. I didn't usually go to these meetings, I valued my sanity, but after what had happened, I figured I'd make an appearance. I wasn't the only one. Even folks who normally avoided HOA politics showed up, eager for a front row seat to whatever drama was about to unfold. The moment Karen walked in, you could feel the tension crackle. Her shoulders were stiff, her sunglasses hid her eyes, and she clutched her clipboard like a life raft. But the whispers followed her like shadows. "There she is, tow queen. Wonder if she'll write herself a ticket next time." She sat down at the front table beside the other board members, 5 of them total. Usually, they let her run the show. But today they looked different. Cold. Tired. "Let's begin," she said, clearing her throat. First item, improper vehicle parking violations. The entire room laughed. Not just a chuckle, full-blown laughter. Karen froze, color draining from her face. "What's so funny?" she snapped. One of the board members, a man named Howard, usually quiet, mid-60s, the type who trims his hedges with a ruler, leaned forward and said, "Karen, we've received several complaints about your vehicle being towed last week. Care to explain?" The room went silent again, But this time it was the sharp kind of silence that makes every breath sound loud. Karen straightened her blouse and forced a smile. "That was a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "Someone must have entered the wrong address on the form. It wasn't my fault." Howard raised an eyebrow. "We reviewed the documentation. You filed the report personally." Karen blinked. "Excuse me." "The tow company sent us a copy," he said, holding up a paper. "Form submitted by HOA President Patricia K. Wilcox. Address, 42 Maple Court, your home address." Karen's jaw dropped. "That's ridiculous. I was targeting a different vehicle. That's clearly an administrative error." Another board member, Denise, a middle-aged woman with a permanent no-nonsense expression, leaned forward. "Administrative error or not, you had a resident's car towed without proper verification. That's a violation of HOA policy and possibly state law." Karen stammered. "But I was enforcing the rules." Howard tapped the paper. "By breaking them?" The crowd murmured, some trying not to laugh. I caught Mrs. Simmons smirking in the back row, whispering, "Poetic, isn't it?" Karen turned red. "You people don't understand. This neighborhood needs order. If I don't enforce the rules, everything will fall apart." But for the first time, her voice didn't sound powerful. It sounded desperate. Denise flipped open her folder. "Actually, we've reviewed multiple complaints from residents. Harassment, unfair fines, unauthorized inspections." Karen's eyes widened. "You can't just take their word for it." Howard sighed. "It's not just their word. We have video evidence." He pressed play on a tablet. On screen, Karen standing in someone's driveway, measuring their grass with a ruler. Another clip, her photographing a mailbox, muttering, 2 inches too high." The room erupted with laughter again. Someone clapped. Someone else shouted, "Guess the grass really was greener on her side." Karen slammed her palm on the table. "This is outrageous. You're all turning against me because of one mistake." Howard stood. "Karen, it's not one mistake. It's a pattern of abuse. And after last week's incident, we can't ignore it anymore." He turned to the audience. "As of today, the board will hold a vote to remove Patricia Wilcox as HOA president." The room exploded. Applause. Cheers. Even a whistle or two. Karen looked like she'd been struck. "You can't do this. I built this HOA. I am this HOA." Denise stood. "Then maybe it's time to rebuild it, without you." The vote was quick, almost too easy. 5 board members. 4 votes for removal. 1 abstained, Karen herself, glaring daggers at everyone. Howard folded the paper neatly and said, "Motion passed. Effective immediately, Patricia Wilcox is removed from her position as HOA president." It was over. Karen's clipboard slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. She looked around the room, as if waiting for someone, anyone, to defend her. No one did. Not the people she'd fined. Not the ones she'd bullied. Not even her supposed allies. Just silence. Finally, she grabbed her bag, stood up, and stormed toward the exit. But before she reached the door, she turned, eyes blazing. "You're all going to regret this," she hissed. "Without me, this place will fall apart." Howard smiled. "Then I guess we'll just have to risk it." The door slammed. The room burst into laughter again. I leaned back in my chair, trying to hide my grin. There it was, the full circle moment. The Queen had finally lost her crown. As everyone began to file out, Denise walked past me and said quietly, "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but that tow truck might have done this neighborhood a favor." I nodded. "Yeah. Sometimes karma just needs a good engine." And as I stepped outside, the air felt lighter again. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the cul-de-sac. The storm was over. But for Karen? It was just beginning. If you thought getting kicked off the HOA board would humble Karen, you clearly haven't met her kind of crazy. Most people, after being publicly voted out, might take a break. Maybe go on a spa weekend, bake some cookies, do a little self-reflection. Not Karen. Karen didn't retreat. She regrouped. For a week, she vanished again. No morning jogs, no garden inspections, no barking orders at the mailman. But behind those drawn curtains of hers, she was cooking up something dangerous. And one Friday morning, the neighborhood found out exactly what. It started small, an email blast from a mysterious sender, neighborhood emergency meeting, HOA board corruption exposed. The sender's name? Concerned resident. But the wording? The dramatic punctuation? The bold red font? Oh, I knew that style anywhere. Karen. I clicked it open and almost choked on my coffee. Attached was a 12-page report accusing the new HOA board of gross misconduct, financial mismanagement, and collusion with homeowners to undermine community standards. The evidence. Screenshots of Facebook comments, half-cropped invoices, and one blurry photo of Howard buying donuts, labeled possible bribery. It would have been funny if it wasn't so unhinged. But Karen didn't stop there. She printed copies and stuffed them in every mailbox in the neighborhood. She even taped one to the clubhouse door. By noon, everyone was talking. Did you see what she sent out? She's saying Denise rigged the election. Who even uses clip art in an investigation? Denise called an emergency meeting that same evening to address the chaos. And you better believe, I was front row again, popcorn in hand this time. The room was packed. The tension thick. And then, just like a bad movie villain making her entrance, Karen strutted in. Clipboard replaced with a thick binder labeled, Proof. You can't just ignore the truth, she declared, slamming it on the table. Howard sighed. Karen, you're not on the board anymore. You don't have authority here. Oh, but I have evidence, she said dramatically, flipping open the binder. Page 4, Financial discrepancies in last month's landscaping budget. Denise leaned over, squinting. That's a receipt from 2022, for mulch you ordered. Karen blinked. That's irrelevant. Howard pinched the bridge of his nose. Karen, you're harassing us. You're spreading false claims. I'm exposing corruption, she shot back. I've already forwarded this to the county. That made the room gasp, and not in the way she hoped. See, here's the thing. When you accuse an HOA of financial misconduct, the county actually investigates. And when they did, they didn't find corruption. They found something worse, but for her. Turns out, during her time as president, Karen had been reimbursing herself for board expenses that didn't exist. Receipts for office supplies, a $120 haircut. Legal consultation fees, a dinner at Olive Garden. And my personal favorite, community safety enhancement, a $300 set of decorative garden lights for her porch. When the county clerk's office called Howard, they were confused. Sir, the investigator said, why is your former president submitting reimbursement claims for home decor? Howard nearly dropped the phone. By Monday, the entire neighborhood knew. Karen's exposé had backfired spectacularly. Instead of exposing corruption, she exposed herself, financially, ethically, and socially. And when the local paper's small-town gossip column caught wind of it, oh, they loved it. Headline of the week, ex-HOA president accuses board of corruption. Investigation finds her spending HOA funds on lawn decor. I don't think Karen left her house for 3 days after that. But karma wasn't done yet. Because when the county wrapped up their investigation, they didn't just issue a warning, they demanded repayment. $2,347.28. That might not sound like much to some, but to Karen, it was humiliation with a price tag. Denise hand-delivered the notice to her doorstep. Consider this closure, she said, calm but firm. Karen's face turned scarlet. This is harassment, she screamed. No, Denise replied. This is accountability. The door slammed so hard, the wreath nearly fell off. By now, most of the neighborhood had moved from fear to amusement. People waved at Karen when she stormed to her mailbox, some even saying, "Need a tow truck for that ego?" She didn't wave back. But she wasn't done either. The next week, she started posting on the neighborhood Facebook group again, rants about unfair treatment, tyrannical leadership, and how outsiders were destroying the spirit of the community. Every post got ratioed within minutes. People commented gifs of tow trucks, karma memes, and screenshots of her own words from the last year. She tried to delete them, but it was too late. The internet never forgets. Even her friends, the few she had left, started to distance themselves. One by one, they unfriended her. It was poetic justice in real time. And me? I just sat back on my porch, coffee in hand, watching it all unfold like the world's most entertaining soap opera. Sometimes you don't need to fight people like Karen. You just give them enough rope, and they'll tow themselves away. As I watched her slam her car door and peel out of the driveway, I couldn't help but grin. That same SUV, shiny from the tow yard polish, looked like it couldn't wait to get out of her control again. Good riddance, I muttered. And as the sun dipped low, painting the neighborhood gold, I realized something. Karma doesn't just strike once. It circles back, with a tow hook, a clipboard, and a sense of humor. You'd think after getting caught pocketing HOA money and having her car towed in front of the whole neighborhood, Karen might finally back down. But no. For Karen, humiliation wasn't a lesson, it was a challenge. A few weeks passed. The neighborhood settled back into peace. Kids played in the cul-de-sac again. The air actually felt lighter without her constant barking. And then one morning, I saw a man in a suit knock on Denise's door, papers in hand. She opened it, smiled politely, and then froze when she saw the envelope. "Is this what I think it is?" she asked. The man nodded. "You've been served." By noon, everyone knew Karen was suing the HOA. Her claim? Defamation of character, unlawful removal from board, and emotional distress. That last part made half the neighborhood laugh out loud. Emotional distress? She'd caused enough of that for everyone else to last a lifetime. But Karen was serious. She filed real paperwork, hired a lawyer, the cheapest one she could find, and strutted around like she was about to take down the Supreme Court. I overheard her bragging to her friend at the mailbox, "They'll regret ever crossing me. I'm going to own that clubhouse by next month." Her friend just nodded quietly, probably wishing she could teleport out of that conversation. The court date came faster than anyone expected. Half the neighborhood took off work just to attend, not because we had to, but because nobody wanted to miss that show. It was held in the county courthouse downtown. When I walked in, Karen was already seated at the plaintiff's table, hair perfectly sprayed, glasses low on her nose, and that infamous clipboard sitting proudly beside her lawyer, like a symbol of all her delusion. Her attorney looked nervous. He couldn't have been older than 25, fresh out of law school, probably still paying off his bar exam fees. Meanwhile, the HOA had a real attorney, calm, confident, and ready to dismantle her claim piece by piece. When the judge entered, Karen didn't even stand up right away. She was too busy organizing her color-coded evidence folders. The judge cleared his throat. "Ms. Watkins." She jumped up, startled. "Oh. Yes, Your Honor. Present and prepared." The judge's eyebrow twitched. "Good. Let's begin." Karen's lawyer started first. "Your Honor," he began, "my client was unfairly removed from her elected position and subsequently defamed by malicious rumors spread throughout the community." Karen nodded dramatically at every sentence, clutching her chest like a victim in a soap opera. Then it was the HOA's turn. Their lawyer stood, calm and collected. "Your Honor," she said smoothly, "Ms. Watkins was removed after violating multiple bylaws, misusing HOA funds, and harassing residents. The so-called rumors she references are in fact findings from a county investigation, with receipts." She handed the judge a folder. Karen's head snapped up. "Objection. Those were taken out of context." The judge looked at her. "Ms. Watkins, this isn't television. Sit down." The courtroom snickered. Even the bailiff cracked a smile. When the HOA lawyer presented the evidence, it was devastating. Line by line, dollar by dollar, every shady reimbursement she'd ever filed was displayed on the overhead projector. Karen squirmed in her seat. Her lawyer whispered, "Do you want me to?" She hissed back, "Just say something." So he did. "Your Honor," he stammered, "these purchases were, community-related?" The judge blinked. "A $300 safety enhancement, listed as decorative fairy lights?" Karen jumped in, "Those were to deter burglars." The courtroom erupted in laughter. The judge banged his gavel. "Order. Order." It was no use. The damage was done. By the time the HOA's side finished, Karen looked deflated, but she wasn't done making things worse. When it was her turn to testify, she went off script. "This entire board has conspired against me," she shouted. They're jealous. They've been targeting me since day one because I actually care about the community. Ms. Watkins, the judge warned, stick to the facts. She ignored him. And that man, she pointed straight at me, has been mocking me online, posting videos about my car being towed. The entire courtroom turned toward me. I just raised an eyebrow. Ma'am, I didn't post anything. The neighbors did. I just watched. Even the judge chuckled. Let's move on. When closing statements ended, everyone already knew the outcome. The judge sighed, rubbed his temples, and said, Ms. Watkins, the court finds your lawsuit to be without merit. Furthermore, given the documented misuse of HOA funds and the frivolous nature of this filing, you are ordered to reimburse the HOA's legal costs. Karen's jaw dropped. Reimburse? But the judge didn't even look up. Case dismissed. Bang. It was over. As we left the courtroom, Karen stood frozen, clipboard clutched to her chest, eyes wide. Her lawyer patted her shoulder awkwardly. We'll talk about payment later. Denise walked past her, calm as ever, and said softly, told you the rules apply to everyone. Outside, the cameras were waiting, local reporters, neighbors with phones, everyone wanting a quote. Karen stormed past them, muttering about appeals and injustice, but no one listened. Later that week, an official notice appeared on her door, lien filed, failure to repay HOA legal fees. She'd gone from president, to plaintiff, to debtor. And me? I was back on my porch that evening, watching the sunset reflect off the same spot where her shiny SUV had once been towed away. It hit me then, karma doesn't rush. It drives slow, steady, and always parks in the right spot. I smiled, sipped my coffee, and said quietly, case closed, Karen. We all thought it was over. Karen was gone. Her house was sold, her clipboard buried in the trash, and peace, real peace, had finally returned to Maple Court. For months, the neighborhood was calm. Kids played outside again. BBQs returned. The HOA meetings actually ended on time. It felt like a bad dream had finally lifted. But if we'd learned anything about Karen, it's that she wasn't the kind of storm that passed quietly. She was the kind that circled back, stronger, louder, and twice as dangerous. It started small. One morning, Denise, our new HOA president, opened her mailbox and froze. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No return address. No signature. Just one typed line, "This isn't over." At first, we thought it was a prank. But then more letters appeared. Neighbors got them too, slipped under doors, tucked into flower pots, taped to mailboxes. Each with the same message, Maple Court doesn't belong to you. It was creepy. The kind of thing that makes you double-check your locks at night. Then came the reports, people seeing a white SUV circling the cul-de-sac late at night. Headlights off. Windows tinted. Moving slow. The same kind of SUV Karen used to drive. I remember standing on my porch one evening when I saw it for myself. The engine purred at the corner of the street. Then, just as I stepped forward, it sped off. All I caught was a glimpse of the plate, partially covered, but familiar. The next morning, Denise called an emergency HOA meeting. She looked pale, tired, like she hadn't slept in days. We're being harassed, she said flatly. And I think it's Karen. The room buzzed. People murmured, exchanged nervous looks. Someone asked, but she's gone, right? Out of the county? Denise shook her head. Not exactly. She filed a business license last month. Right here. Under a new name, Community Compliance Consulting. I swear, half the room groaned in unison. Karen had reinvented herself. Not as an HOA president, but as a county-level code enforcement consultant. And she wasn't just consulting, she was weaponizing every regulation she could find. Within weeks, Maple Court was hit with inspection notices. Random drive-bys from code officers. Noise complaints that didn't exist. Fines for non-standard lawn edging and unauthorized mailbox paint. Denise tried to keep calm, but the pressure was brutal. Every day was a new form, a new violation, a new reason to pull her hair out. It was like Karen had gone digital, invisible but everywhere. The final straw came one Saturday morning. A county truck showed up with a bright orange sticker that read, "Property under review for code violation." They slapped it right on Denise's garage door. She ran outside, furious. "What violation?" she demanded. The officer shrugged. "Complaint filed by a certified consultant. Miss, K. D. Renard." The room went silent. Renard. Karen D. Renard. Her full name. She'd literally just rearranged her initials and thought no one would notice. Denise snapped a photo and sent it straight to the county clerk. By noon, the clerk called her back, laughing so hard he could barely talk. "Yeah," he said, "we caught her. She's been filing bogus complaints countywide, over 100 so far." Turns out, Karen had found a loophole that let her submit enforcement requests anonymously, but she'd been sloppy, leaving traces of her email and signature pattern everywhere. The county launched an internal review, and by the end of the week, every bogus report was traced back to her consulting firm. The result? A county-wide cease and desist order. Every complaint she'd filed was not only voided, but flagged for malicious abuse of authority. And that's when things got really interesting. The local news picked up the story. Headline: Former HOA President faces investigation for county-wide harassment scheme. The photo? Karen, red-faced, storming out of a county office with a reporter's mic in her face. The comments section was brutal. People from nearby neighborhoods chimed in. "She tried that in our area too." Finally, someone stopped her. It was like every victim of Karen's rule found their voice at once. By the time the county sheriff served her with the official charges, she'd become a symbol, not of order, but of obsession. I'll never forget the day they came to seize her consulting equipment. 3 deputies walked out of her rented office carrying boxes labeled HOA records, property logs, resident lists. All stuff she wasn't supposed to have anymore. Denise stood across the street, arms folded, watching it all unfold. When Karen spotted her, she froze for a second, then hissed, "You think this ends me? You think you've won?" Denise didn't even blink. "It's not about winning," she said quietly. "It's about peace." Karen sneered. "Peace is for the weak." Then she got in her car and drove off, not her SUV this time, but a beat-up sedan with no plates. And just like that, she vanished again. No forwarding address. No trace. Only a trail of chaos behind her. Weeks passed. Things went back to normal again. The county cleared every false report. The neighborhood returned to laughter and lawnmowers. Still sometimes, late at night, people said they heard that same beat-up car cruising by, slow, quiet, like a ghost refusing to rest. But for the first time, nobody was afraid. Because we all knew something now, something Karen never learned. You can run from your past, you can change your name, but you can't rebrand your karma. And when it catches up, it doesn't knock. It tows. After the storm Karen left behind, Maple Court finally started to breathe again. The air was lighter. The laughter came back. Kids chalked up driveways again, and for the first time in years, nobody worried about violation notices taped to their mailboxes. But peace comes with new responsibilities, and a big one was looming over us: the annual HOA election. Normally, those elections were a joke. Back when Karen ran the show, the votes were counted behind closed doors. She'd announce the results before half the neighborhood even knew the ballots existed. If anyone questioned her, she'd say, "It's all in the bylaws," and slam her binder shut. But now, things were different. Denise, the woman who had stood up to Karen through everything, decided it was time to restore real democracy, HOA style. She gathered us in the community center one Saturday morning. The sun poured through the blinds, catching the dust in golden rays. "Neighbors," she said, "we're going to do this right. Open ballots. Open counting. 1 vote per household, no exceptions." There was a ripple of applause. It felt good, like we were finally taking back what had been stolen from us. But as we all filled out our forms, something unexpected happened. A hand shot up from the back of the room. A familiar hand. Manicured nails. Glittery bracelet. And then, a voice that made everyone freeze. "I'd like to nominate myself," she said. "Karen." The room went silent, like someone had just cut the power. She stepped forward, calm and collected, in her perfectly pressed blazer and pearls, like she hadn't vanished in disgrace just a few months earlier. "How did you even get in here?" Denise asked, stunned. Karen smiled, the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "I'm still a property owner," she said smoothly. "Technically, I rent a small parcel on Maple Court, which means I'm eligible to participate." She held up a printed lease agreement. All perfectly legal. The crowd started murmuring. You could feel the confusion and the disbelief. Was she really trying to come back? Denise composed herself. "Fine. You can attend. But remember, this is an open election. No tricks, no secret counts." Karen's eyes glittered. "Of course," she said sweetly. "I believe in fairness." But the smirk that followed told us she was already plotting something. The election began. We each got a ballot and wrote our votes. Denise for president. A few others for vice president, treasurer, and so on. Karen? She had her name written under independent candidate. She stood by the refreshment table like she owned the place, shaking hands, pretending to be friendly. "Good to see you, Tom," she'd chirp. "How's that garden doing? Still against HOA regulations?" It was fake, painfully fake, but she was working the crowd. When it came time to count the votes, Denise made sure everything was transparent. A long folding table. A single clear box filled with ballots. "Every vote will be counted in front of everyone," she said. Karen crossed her arms, chin high. "Transparency is always important," she said loudly, like she was the one teaching the lesson. One by one, the votes were tallied. Denise vote. Denise vote. Denise vote. By the 20th ballot, it was clear where things were heading. Karen's face twitched. A muscle in her jaw tightened. When her name finally came up, it was a pity vote, and everyone knew who wrote it. The count finished. Denise had over 90% of the votes. Karen had exactly one. The crowd erupted into cheers. It wasn't wild celebration, it was something quieter, deeper. A sense of closure. But Karen? She didn't move. She just stood there, her knuckles white around her clipboard. Denise turned to her gently. "Karen, I think the neighborhood's spoken." Karen's voice was low, shaking but sharp. "This isn't over. None of you understand what I built here." Denise nodded. "You're right. We understand it too well." Karen's eyes flashed with something dark, a mix of anger and disbelief. "You think you can run this place without me? You'll fall apart within a month." But this time, nobody responded. Nobody argued. The silence was her answer. She stormed out, heels clicking hard against the tile floor. The door slammed so loud it rattled the glass. Outside, you could see her standing by her car, clutching that same clipboard she'd once used like a weapon. She stared at the building for a long moment, then threw the clipboard into the passenger seat and drove off. That night, the whole neighborhood gathered on the green space for what Denise called the Freedom Cookout. Burgers sizzling. Music playing. Kids running around. And no one, not a single person, mentioned regulations or violations once. As the sun went down, Denise raised her glass. "To a new chapter," she said. "And to finally being neighbors, not subjects." Everyone cheered. For the first time in years, it felt like we actually belonged here. Still, as I stood there under the fairy lights, I couldn't shake one thought. Karen wasn't the type to disappear quietly. She'd lost her power, her home, her reputation, but people like her don't give up. They reload. They plan. And they wait. As I looked down the street, I thought I saw a shadow near the old fence line, someone watching motionless, just out of the light. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just the wind. But something deep down told me this wasn't the end. Karen wasn't done. And the next time she came back, she wouldn't come alone. It had been 3 months since the election. 3 months of peace, laughter, and the kind of quiet that felt earned. Maple Court was finally normal again. No violation notices, taped to mailboxes. No surprise HOA inspections at dawn. No one lurking with a clipboard waiting to pounce on a misplaced flower pot. It was bliss. But peace, as we learned, doesn't last long when Karen's still breathing somewhere nearby. At first, we thought she'd moved on. Rumor was she'd left town, maybe staying with family or renting somewhere outside the county. Denise, the new HOA president, had even said, "Let's just hope she finds happiness somewhere far, far away." We laughed, toasted our iced teas, and moved on. Until the letters started showing up. The first one landed in my mailbox on a Tuesday morning. Plain white envelope. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, no signature. Your driveway violates HOA paint standards. Expect correction notice. At first, I thought it was a prank. Maybe one of the neighbors having a laugh. But by Friday, 3 more people had gotten similar letters. Different fonts. Same message. Fake citations. Threats of fines. Warnings about property compliance. It was like a ghost HOA had come back from the dead. Denise called an emergency meeting that weekend. Everyone gathered in the community center, tense, whispering, some clutching the letters like they were evidence from a crime scene. She stood at the front with a stack of envelopes. Whoever's doing this is impersonating the HOA. The return address traces back to a P.O. box in the next town. Tom, our resident conspiracy theorist, muttered, "You think it's her, don't you?" Denise sighed. "I want to believe she's moved on. But this," she held up one letter, "has her fingerprints all over it." Everyone knew what she meant. The tone. The threats. The self-righteousness. Classic Karen. 2 weeks later, things escalated. A neighbor's security camera caught a car rolling down Maple Court around 3 a.m. Headlights off. Stopping at random driveways. Dropping something in mailboxes. When they zoomed in on the footage, the figure stepping out was wearing a wide-brimmed hat and sunglasses. Even blurry, even in the dark, we all knew. It was her. Karen was back. The next morning, Denise showed up at my door with a coffee in one hand and fire in her eyes. "She's setting up fake HOAs," she said flatly. "Multiple neighborhoods have reported identical letters. She's calling herself the Neighborhood Integrity Task Force." I almost choked on my coffee. She started her own HOA? Denise nodded grimly. An illegal one. No registration, no authority, but she's sending fake fines and threatening legal action. We sat in silence for a moment, the absurdity sinking in. Karen had lost everything, and decided to rebuild her empire from scratch. Only this time, she was doing it from the shadows. By the end of the week, she'd gone digital. A slick-looking website appeared, The True HOA of Maple Court. It used the same logo Karen had designed years ago, the one Denise had retired after the election. The site listed violations, made-up dues, and a public record of supposed delinquents. Guess who was at the top of that list? Me. For repeated defiance of neighborhood beautification standards. I wasn't even mad, I almost admired the dedication. Almost. That night, Denise called a meeting with the county legal office. "This has gone too far," she said. "She's committing mail fraud, online impersonation, and harassment." But getting proof wasn't easy. Karen had registered everything under fake names and P.O. boxes. Every time they traced something, she was one step ahead, like a villain playing hide and seek with the law. And then, she made her first big move. On a warm Friday afternoon, a tow truck rolled into the neighborhood. Deja vu. Everyone froze, remembering that day, the day karma came with a hook. The driver got out, clipboard in hand. "Got a call for vehicle removal," he said. "Blue sedan, 44 Maple Court." That was my address. Denise stepped forward fast. "Who authorized this?" The driver frowned. "It says HOA request." She snatched the paper, scanned it, and laughed. "This isn't official. It's signed by President Karen L. Whitmore." The driver blinked. "Wait, the Karen? Oh no, not her again." He tore the paper in half. "Not towing a thing. Not after last time." He got back in his truck and left, honking twice like a salute to poetic justice. But the next morning, things turned darker. Someone had slashed Denise's car tires. Another neighbor's flower bed had been ripped up. And spray-painted on the wall near the mailboxes, in thick black letters, were the words, "The Queen returns." That's when everyone knew, this wasn't just pettiness anymore. It was war. Denise called the sheriff's office. A deputy came out, took photos, and said, "You've got enough evidence for a harassment case." He looked at us seriously. "If she's escalating, we'll find her. But she's smart. People like her always think they're untouchable, until they're not. That night, I sat on my porch, watching the shadows stretch across the cul-de-sac. It was quiet again, too quiet. And for a second, I thought I saw a car parked just beyond the streetlights. Engine off. Windows tinted. Watching. I turned on my porch light, and the car rolled away slow, no plates visible. Karen was out there, all right. Plotting. Waiting. But this time, the neighborhood wasn't afraid. We'd beaten her once. We'd do it again. Because Karen could fake websites, print letters, even spray paint threats, but one thing she couldn't fake was community. And that was something we'd built stronger than ever. You know that eerie calm before a storm? That's exactly what Maple Court felt like for the next 2 weeks. No fake letters. No weird spray paint. No late-night cars creeping down the street. Just silence. Too much silence. And in my gut, I knew it wasn't over. Karen didn't vanish. She was regrouping. Denise called me early one morning. "Get dressed," she said. "We're going hunting." 10 minutes later, her SUV pulled up in front of my driveway. She was wearing sunglasses, a ponytail, and that I mean business expression I'd come to trust. "Where we going?" I asked. She handed me a printed email. It was from the county clerk's office. "Following your inquiry, we traced multiple complaint letters and website domains to a single IP address, registered in Oak Hill Storage Facility, Unit 204. I blinked. "Storage unit?" Denise grinned. "Karen's empire has a headquarters." We drove 15 minutes to the edge of town. Oak Hill Storage was one of those big blue steel complexes, hundreds of identical roll-up doors stretching into the horizon. The manager met us out front, wiping grease off his hands. "You the HNA folks?" he asked. Denise nodded. "We're investigating a potential identity fraud case." He sighed. "You're not the first to ask. That woman's been coming here late at night, says she's running a community improvement business. Always pays cash, always paranoid." He led us to Unit 204. The padlock was new. The air around it smelled faintly like printer ink. He glanced around and whispered, "Want me to open it?" "She's 2 months behind on rent anyway." Denise raised an eyebrow. "Do it." When that metal door rolled up, we froze. Inside, it looked like the lair of a suburban supervillain. Stacks of paper, printed violation letters. File boxes labeled with neighbor names. A laptop humming on a folding table. And taped to the wall, a giant map of Maple Court, dotted with red pushpins. Each pin marked a house. Each pin had notes scribbled beside it: mowed late, loud dog, paint shade off-white, not beige. Denise let out a slow whistle. She recreated the entire HOA. I stepped closer to the laptop. The screen was still on, open to a draft email. "To all Maple Court residents, as your true HMA leader, I will restore order. Disobedience will not be tolerated. Signed, President Karen L. Whitmore Neighborhood Integrity Task Force." Denise stared in disbelief. She's actually lost it. Just then, a shadow flickered across the doorway. Looking for something? It was her. Karen stood there, hands on hips, wearing her signature sun visor and floral scarf like it was battle armor. Her voice was sharp. "You had no right to come here." Denise shot back, "You've been impersonating a legal entity, harassing residents, and committing fraud. We have every right." Karen's face twisted. "Fraud? I'm the only one keeping this neighborhood from falling apart. You're all lazy, letting weeds grow, trash cans left out, paint fading." "Karen," I interrupted, "you don't live there anymore." Her jaw clenched. "That neighborhood is my legacy." She lunged for the laptop, but Denise was faster. She snatched it up and held it high. "Not this time," Denise said firmly. "You're done." Karen froze. For a moment, the mask slipped. Her voice trembled. "You think you can erase me? I built Maple Court. I kept it perfect. You all mocked me, but when property values dropped, who fixed them? Me." I met her eyes. "At what cost? You terrorized your own neighbors." She laughed, bitter, broken. "They needed discipline." Denise stepped forward. "No, Karen. They needed a community." And with that, she turned to the storage manager. Call the sheriff. Tell them we've got the evidence. Karen's bravado cracked. She looked between us, her breathing quick and shallow. Then she bolted, sprinting toward the back exit. Karen! I shouted, chasing her around the corner. But by the time I turned the corner, she was gone. All that remained was the echo of her heels fading into the distance. The deputies arrived 20 minutes later. They took photos, packed the letters and laptop into evidence bags, and promised to open a full investigation. When one deputy booted up the laptop, his eyebrows shot up. Whoa. She's been sending complaints under a fake law firm name, Whitmore Legal Group. None of these licenses are real. Denise exhaled. She's finished. He nodded. This is federal-level impersonation. She'll have to answer for this. That evening, word spread through Maple Court like wildfire. Neighbors gathered on porches, talking, laughing, relieved. Kids rode their bikes down the street again. For the first time in months, the neighborhood breathed. But deep down, I couldn't shake the image of Karen's face, that mix of pride, anger, and desperation. Denise must have read my mind. She's not gone yet, she said quietly. People like her never accept defeat. They just reinvent it. I nodded. Then we'll be ready next time. A week later, the sheriff's department called with an update. They'd tracked Karen's car, abandoned outside a motel 2 towns over. Her name was still on the laptop, the letters, everything. But Karen herself? Gone. No sign of her anywhere. Just a motel room with an open planner, pages full of notes and addresses, new neighborhoods, new targets. And scribbled across the last page in neat handwriting was one final line: "You can't stop perfection." That night, as I stood on my porch under the warm glow of the streetlights, I thought about everything we'd gone through. The lies. The threats. The battles. Karen might have run, but she'd already lost the one thing she craved most: control. Because Maple Court wasn't hers anymore. It was ours. For a while, it felt like peace had finally settled over Maple Court. The lawn stayed green, the mailboxes stayed straight, and not a single violation notice appeared on anyone's doorstep. Neighbors laughed again. Kids chalked up the sidewalks. Even Denise, who'd inherited the HOA presidency after the chaos, started smiling more. We all thought Karen was gone for good. But if there's one thing we'd learned about Karen Whitmore, it's that she didn't vanish, she reloaded. It started with an envelope. No return address. Just a gold seal that read, Neighborhood Compliance Division, Regional Office. Denise opened it at the next HOA meeting. Inside was a thick packet, official-looking forms, legal jargon, and a notice demanding Maple Court's immediate compliance with new federal HOA standards. At the bottom was a signature, Director K. L. Whitmore. Denise froze. Whitmore, she whispered. I leaned over her shoulder. You've got to be kidding me. The entire room fell silent. It looked real. Embossed paper. Federal watermark. Even a hotline number. But we'd seen enough of Karen's tricks to know better. Denise called the number on speaker. A woman answered, voice professional and sharp. Neighborhood Compliance Division, how may I assist you? Hi, Denise said calmly. This is President Denise Collins from Maple Court HOA. We received a compliance letter signed by a Director Whitmore. Oh yes, the woman replied quickly. Your community was selected for a mandatory audit. We'll need your residence records, budgets, and payment logs. Denise's eyes widened. And where should we send that? To our secure P.O. box in Riverbend, the woman said. Or we can dispatch a field officer to collect them. I mouthed, field officer? Denise replied, could you email the documentation request? Of course, the woman said, and then the line went dead. Not even 10 minutes later, Denise's inbox pinged. There it was, a perfectly formatted email from a Gov compliance address, with a polished letterhead and instructions for data transfer. Only one problem. The footer said the office was located at Route 6 Oak Hill Industrial Park. The same complex where Karen's storage unit used to be. Denise exhaled slowly. She's back. We called the sheriff's department. They looped in the FBI's cybercrime unit, because apparently, impersonating a federal agency crosses a lot of lines. Within hours, Two agents showed up in black SUVs. They were calm, methodical, and to our surprise, already familiar with the name. Agent Morales flipped open his tablet. "You said Karen Whitmore, correct?" Denise nodded. He tapped the screen. "She's been busy. We've tracked similar fake letters in 3 counties, all targeting HOAs. She created a shell company called the Neighborhood Compliance Division, rented a PO box, even paid freelancers to answer calls using fake scripts." I blinked. "She made her own government agency?" He nodded. "Down to the badges and inspection vests. One HOA in Cedar Glen actually handed her all their financial records." Denise's jaw dropped. "You're kidding." "Not even a little," Morales said. "She's been running this grift for months." 2 days later, the trap was set. The FBI asked Denise to reply to Karen's email, pretending to cooperate. They arranged for pickup day, when Karen's so-called field agent would arrive to collect Maple Court's records. Except this time, the records were blank, and the house had microphones hidden in every corner. The day came bright and quiet. A white SUV rolled up to the HOA office. No plates, tinted windows. Out stepped a man in a suit with a laminated badge that read, "Federal Compliance Inspector, Division 7. He smiled politely. "I'm here for the Maple Court audit." Denise handed him the box. "Of course. Everything's ready." As soon as he lifted it, 3 black vehicles boxed him in. FBI agents surrounded the SUV, badges out. "Sir, step away from the vehicle." The man froze, hands up. "What's going on?" Agent Morales stepped forward. "That badge? Fake. That agency? Fake. You're working for a woman named Karen Whitmore." The man's face went pale. "She said it was legitimate, she even had government contracts." Morales frowned. "Where is she now?" The man stammered. She's at the Riverbend office. She said she was doing an audit herself today." 10 minutes later, we were following the agents to Riverbend, a dingy strip of offices near the industrial zone. The Neighborhood Compliance Division sign was freshly painted. Inside, the walls were lined with fake certificates. And behind the front desk sat Karen, wearing a blazer and headset, talking into a landline. "Yes, ma'am, your HMA will be fined if your grass exceeds regulation length." Then she looked up. "Saw us. Saw the FBI jackets." And for the first time ever, Karen Whitmore didn't have a single word. Agent Morales flashed his badge. "Ms. Whitmore, you're under arrest for federal impersonation, fraud, and identity theft." Her hands trembled. "You can't do this to me. I was helping. I was fixing what people ruined." Morales' voice was calm. "You were breaking the law." As they cuffed her, she turned toward me and Denise, eyes wide and glistening. "I was just trying to make neighborhoods better," she said quietly. I shook my head. "You were just trying to make them yours." They led her out past the fake certificates and gold seal logos. Neighbors later said the sight of her, handcuffed, still arguing about community standards, was poetic justice in motion. Karen Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of Maple Court, was officially dethroned by the United States government. In the weeks that followed, the story hit the local news. Fake HOA agency busted. Woman arrested for federal impersonation. Maple Court became famous overnight, for all the right reasons. Denise held a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate. Someone even made t-shirts that said, "Compliance approved by Karma." We laughed, we healed, and for the first time, we really felt like a community. But as I threw my burger on the grill that night, Denise leaned closer and whispered, "You know they never found her laptop, right?" I frowned. "Wait, what?" She nodded. "The FBI took everything, except one missing device. The one she used for emails." I stared at her. "You think she's..." Denise shrugged. "Karen always has one more move." Because in our neighborhood, even when justice wins, karma doesn't clock out early. For a few blissful weeks, life on Maple Court felt normal. No surprise letters. No clipboard crusades. No one threatening fines for grass blades facing the wrong direction. The air was light. The neighborhood looked brighter. Even the mailman smiled when he came around, probably relieved not to deliver another round of Karen's notices. We'd survived the storm. Or at least, that's what we thought. It started small, like most of Karen's schemes did. Denise was sorting HOA emails one morning when she saw one labeled Urgent, Compliance Audit Follow-up. At first, she almost deleted it. But the sender's name made her freeze. From Karen Whitmore at Neighborhood Compliance. Her fingers trembled as she clicked. Dear Maple Court HOA, recent events have caused confusion regarding the legitimacy of the Neighborhood Compliance Division. This email serves as notice that our operations are ongoing under new federal partnership oversight. Please prepare for a Phase 2 audit to restore your standing as a model community. Regards, K.L. Whitmore Director, Regional Standards Division. Denise sat back in her chair. No way, she whispered. I was across the room fixing a cup of coffee. When I saw her face, pale, tense, eyes locked on the screen, I knew instantly. She's back, isn't she? Denise just nodded. The FBI had seized everything. Her office, her files, her fake badges, even the car she used for compliance inspections. Karen had been booked, processed, and released pending trial. But she was not supposed to have access to anything. So how was she emailing again? We called Agent Morales. He showed up that afternoon, serious as ever. She's been quiet for weeks, he said, scanning the screen. But this domain, he paused. This isn't one we shut down. It's new. Denise frowned. So she made another one? Morales nodded grimly. Looks that way. She's trying to re-establish authority, probably to bait communities into sending her money again. I shook my head. After everything? She's still at it? Morales sighed. Some people don't know how to stop being in charge, even when the world takes the badge away. That night, Maple Court had an emergency meeting in the clubhouse. Half the neighborhood showed up, whispering, worried, clutching printouts of the new email. She's probably out on bail, someone said. Can't the FBI just arrest her again? Another asked. Denise tried to calm everyone down. The agents are investigating. But until then, we're locking down all HOA communications. No payments, no responses, nothing. Still, the tension was thick. Nobody wanted to admit it, but we all felt that old fear creeping back. That feeling of being watched, judged, controlled. Karen had always known how to make people feel small. Even from behind bars, or apparently, behind a new email address. A few days later, strange things started happening. First, flyers appeared in mailboxes, identical formatting, same official font, same seal. They read, Phase 2 property inspection scheduled. Non-compliance may result in fines. Then came the phone calls. Unknown numbers. Recorded messages claiming to be from the Regional Compliance Division. And finally, the cameras. Small, blinking, motion-activated cameras hidden in corners of the cul-de-sac, tucked under mailboxes, even behind the HOA bulletin board. That's when Denise called me at 2 a.m. I think she's spying on us, she whispered. Someone installed surveillance all over the neighborhood. I grabbed a flashlight and went outside. Sure enough, the little red lights blinked back at me. 1, 2, 3. I yanked one off and flipped it over. There, printed in small letters on the plastic, property of NCD, Federal Monitoring Equipment. NCD, Neighborhood Compliance Division. Karen's ghost organization. The next morning, Morales and his team came back. They pulled down 6 hidden cameras, traced their serial numbers, and confirmed our worst fear. They were purchased after her arrest. Morales muttered, she's using shell accounts again. Probably through an alias. We're tracking the IP addresses. Denise shook her head. She won't stop, will she? Morales gave a thin smile. Not until someone stops her for good. That night, Denise and I sat on my porch, watching the sunset fade over Maple Court. Everything looked peaceful again, but we both knew the peace was an illusion. I sipped my coffee. You think she's nearby? Denise hesitated. Morales said her tracker went dark 2 nights ago. I turned to her. Wait, she's missing? She nodded. She cut off the ankle monitor. They found it in a gas station trash can outside Riverbend. The air went cold. 2 days later, we got the proof. A Ring camera on the far end of the neighborhood caught footage around midnight, a woman in a hoodie, creeping along the sidewalk. She stopped by the clubhouse bulletin board, tacked up something, and walked away. The footage was grainy, but there was no mistaking her walk, that stiff, purposeful stride we'd all seen 1,000 times before. It was Karen. And the note she left behind? Typed. Laminated. Sealed. You can shut down my office. You can take my house. But Maple Court will always belong to me. Director Whitmore, the FBI issued a warrant, but by then she was gone, again. Rumor spread fast. Some said she fled the state. Others swore they saw her car near the county line. But no one knew for sure. A week later, Denise's inbox pinged once more. Another email. This one had just 4 words: I never left. For the first time in months, I locked my door at night. Not because I thought she'd hurt anyone, but because I finally understood how deep her obsession went. Karen wasn't just power-hungry. She was addicted to control. And losing Maple Court had broken something inside her that could never be fixed. The FBI assured us they'd find her. But as days turned to weeks, her trail grew cold. The cameras stopped appearing. The calls ended. The fake emails went silent. And just when everyone started to relax again, a new HOA website went live. Maple Court HOA Official. Com. Same logo. Same tone. And under President's message, one chilling line: community first. Always watching. I didn't tell Denise that night. I just stared at the screen, my heart pounding, as the page refreshed. Somewhere out there, Karen was still watching. Still scheming. Still holding on to her illusion of power, one click, one fake rule, one ghostly message at a time. Because people like her don't just vanish. They haunt the places they once ruled. And Maple Court? It would forever carry her shadow. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing again, but this time, not because of Karen's tantrums. Something had changed. The fear she used to command was gone. People whispered, laughed, even waved to each other. For the first time in months, Maple Court actually felt like a community again. Karen, on the other hand, wasn't doing so great. Her SUV was still missing. The tow yard refused to release it until her fines were paid. But that wasn't the worst of it. Because that's when I got an anonymous envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name, written in shaky handwriting. Inside, copies of HOA expense reports, and a stack of receipts. Receipts showing thousands of dollars in maintenance fees and special projects, all signed off by Karen herself. Except, here's the catch, none of those projects ever happened. There was no gazebo renovation. No neighborhood beautification fund. The money had been quietly rerouted into a personal account under Karen's name. I blinked at the papers, realizing what I was holding. Karen hadn't just been power-hungry. She'd been stealing from her neighbors. So, I made a few phone calls. First to the county office, to confirm the legitimacy of the documents. Then to the HOA's treasurer, who sounded genuinely shocked. And finally, to a few neighbors who'd had enough of her nonsense. By evening, there were 10 of us sitting in my garage, papers spread across a folding table, everyone talking at once. We've been paying for this. She took my landscaping fee for her own yard. This is theft. I nodded. It's time we stop letting her control the narrative. We drafted a formal complaint to the county auditor and scheduled an emergency HOA meeting. Karen had called hundreds of meetings over the years to nitpick everyone else, but now, the tables had turned. When the day came, nearly the entire neighborhood showed up. People packed the clubhouse, murmuring and whispering as Karen strutted in late, clipboard in hand like she still ran the show. Let's begin, she said, forcing a smile. I assume this is about the upcoming lawn inspections? I stood up, holding the folder of evidence. No, Karen. This is about you. Her smile faltered. Excuse me. I walked to the front table and dropped the receipts on it. You've been taking HOA funds and moving them into your personal account. Every dollar's here, and every signature leads straight back to you. The room went silent. You could hear the air conditioner hum. Karen blinked rapidly. That's not true. These are fake. The treasurer, Mr. Dalton, stood up, adjusting his glasses. Actually, they're not. I verified them myself. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few people started recording on their phones. Karen's face turned the color of her clipboard. This is an ambush. You can't just accuse me without proof. I pointed to the documents. We have proof. And the county auditor will have more. You're done, Karen. She looked around, desperate for support. You all believe this? After everything I've done for this neighborhood? A voice from the back shouted, "Yeah, done ruining it." The tension snapped. Neighbors began shouting over each other, years of pent-up frustration spilling out like a dam breaking. Karen backed toward the door, eyes darting, realizing she'd lost control. "Meeting adjourned," she yelled, but no one listened. The next morning, she was gone. Her SUV still impounded, her house dark, and a for sale sign planted crookedly in her front yard. The HOA had finally seen the truth, and the Queen of Maple Court had fallen from her throne. For the first time, it felt like peace might actually last. But as I'd soon learn, Karen wasn't finished yet. She had one last card to play, and it was the dirtiest one of all. You'd think after being publicly exposed, fined, and humiliated, Karen would have packed up quietly and disappeared. But this was Karen. She wasn't wired for humility, she was wired for revenge. A few days after the explosive HOA meeting, things in the neighborhood finally started to calm down. Kids played outside again, sprinklers hissed in the warm air, and everyone seemed lighter, like someone had lifted a curse off Maple Court. Then one morning, I opened my front door and froze. My driveway was covered in trash. Not just random garbage, HOA paperwork. Old notices, letters, copies of violations Karen had written about me months ago. Each page was stamped in red ink, void. And sitting right in the middle of it all was a note. Written in that same perfect, looping handwriting, "You might have won the battle, but I'll win the war." I laughed out loud. Still fighting, huh? But my amusement didn't last long. Because that evening, I got an email from the county office. "You have been reported for illegal modifications on your property. An inspection is scheduled for tomorrow." My stomach dropped. I hadn't done anything wrong, but I didn't need a detective to guess who'd made the report. The next morning, a white county truck pulled into my driveway. A young inspector stepped out, clipboard in hand, clearly annoyed to be there. "Morning," he said. "Got a report that you built an unpermitted structure, some kind of shed or outbuilding?" I blinked. "A shed? I don't even have a shed." He frowned. "That's what I thought. Mind if I take a look around just to confirm?" I led him through the yard, and he shook his head. "There's nothing here. Waste of my time." Before he left, I asked, out of curiosity, who filed the complaint. He glanced at his notes and sighed. "A Ms. Karen Whitmore. Says she's your HNA president." I smirked. "Not anymore, she's not." He chuckled. "Yeah, well, she might have just earned herself a fine for filing a false report." That line alone made my entire morning. But Karen didn't stop there. Over the next week, she tried everything, calling animal control claiming my dog was aggressive, reporting my lawn as overgrown, even filing a noise complaint for a party I supposedly hosted on a Tuesday afternoon. Each time the same pattern: complaint filed, officials show up, nothing found. Eventually, one of the county officers told me, "Sir, we're flagging her name. This kind of harassment through false reporting isn't tolerated." I couldn't help but smile. Karma wasn't done towing her, now it was ticketing her. 2 days later, it finally happened. I was outside trimming hedges when a police cruiser pulled up in front of Karen's house. 2 officers stepped out. Karen came to the door wearing her usual smug face, until one of the officers handed her a citation. "Ms. Whitmore," he said calmly, "you're being cited for filing multiple false complaints and misuse of county resources." Her jaw dropped. "You can't do this." "I'm the president of the—" "Not anymore," the officer interrupted. "And according to our records, you've already been removed by your HOA board." Neighbors peeked from their windows as Karen's voice rose, desperate and shrill. "This is all his fault," she yelled, pointing straight at me. "He turned everyone against me." The officer didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, maybe it's time you moved on." That line hit harder than any fine. She went silent, trembling, and shut her door without another word. The officers got back in their car and drove off. I stood there, hedge clippers in hand, trying not to laugh. Karen had always believed rules were her weapon, but now they were her undoing. Every form, every citation, every policy she once used to control others had come back to bite her. That evening her for sale sign came down, and the next morning, a moving truck showed up. By noon, Karen's reign over Maple Court was officially over. Neighbors gathered quietly on their lawns, watching as the last of her boxes disappeared into the truck. Someone muttered, "Never thought I'd see the day." Another replied, "Good riddance." When the truck pulled away, a cheer went up, small at first, then louder, echoing down the street. I just smiled, leaning against my fence, feeling peace settle over the neighborhood like a long overdue sunset. Karen's war was finally over. But I had a feeling, the story wasn't done yet. Because sometimes, even when karma wins, it likes to make one last lap around the block. The morning after Karen's moving truck disappeared down Maple Court, everything felt different. Quieter. Softer. Like the whole neighborhood finally exhaled after holding its breath for years. For the first time since I moved in, birds sang louder than Karen's complaints. Kids were riding bikes again, laughing instead of hiding when they heard her voice. And the air didn't feel heavy anymore, it felt like freedom. Denise, our new HOA president, stopped by later that day. She handed me a coffee and said with a smile, "Well, looks like peace is finally part of the neighborhood guidelines." I laughed. "Let's make that rule number one, no more Karens allowed." We both looked across the street where Karen's house stood empty, blinds half open, a sold sticker slapped across the real estate sign. It was strange seeing it like that. For so long, that house had been her fortress, her throne, her watchtower. Now, it was just another home waiting for someone new to love it. "Do you ever think she'll come back?" Denise asked quietly. I shrugged. "Maybe. But if she does, I think even karma's tired of towing her around." That line made her laugh so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. Over the next few weeks, life returned to normal, real normal. People started decorating again without fear of citations. Mr. Patel finally put his garden gnomes back on the lawn, 7 of them this time, just to celebrate. The Jenkins family rebuilt their swing set, and for the first time in years, the sound of children playing didn't come with the threat of a noise violation. The HOA meetings turned from battlegrounds into potlucks. Neighbors brought food instead of grievances. We actually talked, like friends, not enemies. And every now and then, when we'd mention Karen, it wasn't out of anger anymore. It was almost funny. A story you tell to remind yourself how far you've come. But one evening, just as the sun was dipping behind the rooftops, I spotted something. A car I didn't recognize, silver sedan, tinted windows, parked right where Karen used to stand with her clipboard. For a second, my stomach sank. Could it be? But as the door opened, out stepped a young couple holding hands. They looked around the street, smiling. "Hi," the woman called. "We just bought this place. Seems like a nice neighborhood." You could practically hear everyone's sighs of relief. I walked over, shaking their hands. "Welcome to Maple Court. You just missed the most dramatic HOA saga in county history." They laughed, probably thinking I was joking. That night, I stood on my porch, watching the street glow under the lamplight. For the first time, it felt like home again. No shouting. No threats. No HOA wars. Just peace. But then, something caught my eye. A faint light flickering in the yard next door, the newly sold house. I walked over to take a closer look, curiosity getting the better of me. And there, under the porch light, half buried in the flower bed, was something small and familiar. A cracked plastic nameplate. The kind that used to sit on Karen's desk. It read, "President Whitmore." I couldn't help but grin. "Guess even karma left you a souvenir," I muttered, tossing it into the trash bin. As I turned to walk home, I looked up at the quiet street one more time. Everything was peaceful, the kind of peace you don't appreciate until you've seen chaos. And that's when it hit me. Karen's story wasn't really about her losing. It was about the neighborhood winning, about good people standing up to a bully and proving that no one, not even an HOA tyrant, is above accountability. Because in the end, it wasn't a lawsuit or an auction that ended her reign. It was unity. It was neighbors finally saying, enough. And that's the funny thing about karma. It doesn't always come crashing in with flashing lights or tow trucks. Sometimes it just waits patiently, until you hang yourself with your own clipboard. I took one last sip of my coffee, smiled, and said to myself, rest easy, Maple Court. You've earned it. Then I walked inside, locked the door, and typed the final line of my story for you all, because sometimes, the best justice isn't loud. It's peaceful. Bell. Subscribe for more HOA justice stories, where karma always shows up on time, clipboard or not.